And after that, Mao made a public statement in support of the black liberation struggle in the United States. Bet you didn't know this. This is not history that you're being taught. This is what Mao said in 1963. He said, an American black leader now taking refuge in Cuba, Mr. Robert Williams, former president of the Monroe, North Carolina chapter of the NAACP, has twice this year asked me for a statement in support of the American black people and their struggle against racial discrimination. On behalf of the Chinese people, I wish to take this opportunity to express our resolute support for African Americans and their struggle against racial discrimination and for freedom and equal rights. I call on the workers, the peasants, the revolutionary intellectuals, the enlightened elements of the bourgeoisie, and other enlightened persons of all colors in the world, whether white, black, yellow, or brown, to unite to oppose the racial discrimination practiced by U.S. imperialism, and to support the American black people in their struggle against racial discrimination. In the final analysis, national struggle is a matter of class struggle. Among the whites in the United States, it is only the reactionary ruling circles who oppress the black people. They can in no way represent the workers, the farmers, the revolutionary intellectuals, and other enlightened persons who comprise the overwhelming majority of white people. At present, it is the handful of imperialists headed by the United States and their supporters, the reactionaries in different countries, who are oppressing, committing aggression against, and menacing the overwhelming majority of nations and peoples in the world. That was Mao Zedong. Chairman Mao Zedong made that statement, and there's more to it. It's a very long document. And that was Mao speaking up for the rights of African Americans. And from Cuba, Robert F. Williams started a radio program. He started broadcasting a radio program from Cuba called Radio Free Dixie. And from Cuba, he started broadcasting calls for black people in the United States to rise up and fight for their rights. Radio Free Dixie. And little known fact, but that statement that Mao Zedong gave, calling for the liberation of black people in the United States, it was distributed. Over 20,000 copies of it were distributed in 1963 at Dr. Martin Luther King's March on Washington. A lot of people don't know this, but you know, the famous March on Washington, where Dr. Martin Luther King gave his speech, I Have a Dream, was a huge gathering, a huge mobilization in support of the Civil Rights Act. 20,000 copies of that statement were handed out by the Workers' World Party. The Workers' World Party, a communist group in the United States, made it their mission to hand out 20,000 copies of Mao's speech. And the headline that they put on at the top of the document, the headline said, "1/4 of humanity is on your side." 1/4 of humanity is on your side. 20,000 copies of that were distributed. 20,000 civil rights marchers got a copy of a statement from Mao, and it said, 1/4 of humanity is on your side. Now, interesting side note, I actually find this kind of what you can call movement history to be very interesting. So the Workers' World Party, they distributed the statement of Mao. And the reason they did that was because the Workers' World Party was one of the only communist groups that was in full support of black nationalism at that time. Right? The Communist Party at that point, in 1957, the Communist Party said that black people did not constitute a nation, that they were facing discrimination, but they were not an oppressed nation. The Socialist Workers' Party supported Malcolm X, but it was kind of confused and had different positions. But the Workers' World Party had been big supporters of black nationalism. And one thing in the Workers' World Party was that there were many black nationalists who had joined the Workers' World Party who hated the civil rights movement. You know, they felt that the civil rights movement was controlled by white people. They supported Malcolm X, they supported the Nation of Islam, and they did not like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his call for racial integration. They believed in a separate black territory in the Black Belt. And so Sam Marcy, the leader of the Workers' World Party, he really wanted the party, the Workers' World Party, which was very new at that point, it was only 4 years old. He really wanted them to attend the Civil Rights March, the 1963, March on Washington. But most of the African-American members of the Workers' World Party didn't want to go. They hated Dr. Martin Luther King. They thought he was a sellout. They didn't believe in racial integration. They wanted an independent black republic. So Sam Marcy made a compromise with them. And he said, you can go, but the only thing we'll distribute is Mao's statement. Mao's statement in support of the civil rights movement. And that they agreed to do. They liked Mao. He was a third world revolutionary anti-imperialist, so they would go to the Civil Rights March, but they would only go there and distribute Mao's statement. And that was the compromise. Fascinating history, very, very fascinating history. I understand, one of the leaders of the Workers' World Party from those years became a prominent leader of the Nation of Islam in later years. I don't remember what his name was. But that's very interesting. The other thing is at the 1963 I Have a Dream March in Washington, D.C., the Communist Party was told not to attend. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was constantly being accused of being a communist. So Dr. Martin Luther King's allies, like Bayard Rustin and others, called up Gus Hall, and they said, don't come. They said, just don't come. We don't want the media to see that you're here. And so the Communist Party did not officially attend the 1963 March on Washington because Dr. Martin Luther King asked them not to, because it would hurt the image. He felt it would hurt the image of the civil rights movement. However, many members of the Communist Party went. But the Communist Party was officially asked not to attend the march because it would hurt the image of the civil rights movement. They'd say, see, it's a communist march. And out of respect for the wishes of the black community, the Communist Party did not publicly attend that march. Now, another interesting thing is that there were a number of communist groups around at the time. The other major communist group in the United States at that point was called the Socialist Workers' Party. They were the Trotskyite Party. And the Socialist Workers' Party, they had a newspaper called The Militant. It was called The Militant. And they attended the march, and they brought with them an issue of their newspaper, The Militant. And the headline of The Militant that they brought it said, Freedom Party Now. And it was a call on black people to break with the Democratic Party. Freedom Party Now. And they printed a speech from the March on Washington that had been banned. I don't know if you know this, but there was a very prominent civil rights leader, and he was in his 20s at this time, who went on to become a member of Congress, John Lewis. And John Lewis was an organizer with Dr. Martin Luther King, and he felt that John F. Kennedy and the Democrats had stabbed the civil rights movement in the back. And so he wrote a speech that he was going to give called, saying, what side is the government on? Why is Kennedy not doing more for civil rights? Why is Kennedy not fighting the Dixiecrats, the Jim Crow members of his own party? Why is he not fighting them harder? And John Lewis, he was banned from giving this speech. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Bayard Rustin said, nope, you can't criticize the Democrats. You cannot criticize John F. Kennedy. You cannot criticize the Democrats from the stage. So this speech was banned, and John Lewis was banned from speaking at the 1963 March on Washington. And they reprinted his speech in their newspaper, and they then, at that point, they distributed, the issue of The Militant with Freedom Party Now. So that's how the three major communist parties in the United States responded to that very historic speech. We all see that in school, right? The image of Dr. Martin Luther King, speaking, I have a dream, the very famous speech. Well, the communists in the United States all had to figure out how they were going to react to it. And that's how they reacted to the situation. And I just think that's a very fascinating piece of history. Very fascinating piece of history.